Hi everyone and welcome along to Sonic Academy with me, Chris Agnelli. Today we're joined by a guy who burst onto the scene in 1986 in the finals of the DMC Mixing Championships, went on to help create the rave scene in the early 90s in the UK, and is still relevant today, releasing tracks on Anjunadeep. Please welcome Jody Wisternoff to the Sonic Academy. Hi Jody.
Hey Chris, how you doing, man?
Not too bad, and yourself?
Yeah, fine, thanks.
Good. Jody, we're going to talk about all things sort of tech and gear, and you've got a beautiful studio. Can you talk us through some of the sort of key pieces you've got in the studio?
Yeah, cool, man. I mean, I'm quite heavy on the analog synths.
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to have picked up a few classics sort of quite recently, actually. It was, years ago when we started Way Out West, we didn't have any money, so it was just samplers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This was even before the VSTs, so it was like early doors. But recently got like, don't know if you can see it, the Jupiter 8 over there, Prophet 5 as well. So, they're kind of like...
And these are recent things. I thought maybe these had been built up over sort of, you've been producing 20 odd years now, is that correct?
Completely. But I only really got into buying since around 2009.
Right.
To be honest.
And what did you start off? Let's go back to Way Out West, very influential in my career. What was the sort of, was it S900s or what was it starting? Where was the gear you got?
Yeah, I mean, the first sampler I had was an S900. Actually, I borrowed it. We couldn't even afford a sampler back in those days. Do you know what I mean? First thing was like an 808 and a 4-track and one belt-driven Technics deck and a Casio CZ1000. That was the beginning, do you know what I mean?
Right.
Actually, no, a Spectrum drum machine as well.
Right.
Remember the Spectrum computer?
Yeah.
I managed to sync the 808 to a Spectrum somehow. Don't know what happened there, but...
And so how did you get that? I mean, that huge sound out of that limited equipment?
Well, no, that was beforehand, and then the Way Out West thing was S1000s.
Oh, right. So
we slowly built like a tower of S1000s. So it was like the Akai Tower. Do you know what I mean?
Right. And was it purely sample based? Was it?
Yeah, 99.9%. I think we had a Juno 106 and a JX8P and a SH101 and a Pro 1, and that was it for synths. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's quite a collect. So your pad, I thought it was purely just a rack of synths. I was going, that's quite impressive. The pads and stuff, like let's go to Domination. There's a big, lovely saw pad. What was that?
Okay, and actually that was the JV 2080. No. Actually, it was a Yamaha TG500.
Right.
Yeah. Do you remember that one? It was like one of the first kind of
The Yamaha I had was the TX81Z.
Oh, that's more relevant now, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
The lately bass was the bass that everybody wanted.
How similar is lately bass to solid bass? Are they pretty much identical, or is there sort of some discrepancy?
To which solid bass?
Solid bass on a DX100. It's like
I don't know. There's a solid bass on like an ES1, but that's kind of very like it. So it's this FME, but it had the 12-bit chip on it that was really the real quality. So you had SH101s, you had a bank of 1000s.
Yeah.
Where did you get the inspiration from? Where did you get those, like, sort of the Azure and the Gift? Where did the Gift come from? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that was inspired by, I was really into jungle at that time.
Yeah.
I was possibly more into like, the Bookham kind of vibe, mid-90s, than house music. That was much more what I was feeling. Even though I was, the Way Out West thing was like mixing breaks and house and whatever, and I was DJing house, I was still really harking back to my days as a hardcore DJ at that point. And when the whole Bookham Dreamy Jungle thing came out, I was like, yeah, this is just vibes. So I was just trying to translate that kind of feeling with the house style that we were doing, or the break kind of house thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You can tell there are breaks even to the recent stuff. There's still elements of breaks that come into your stuff. You love the break beats, don't you?
Yeah, and I think it's going to come back in fashion as well. It's like the 20-year cycle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So break. Yeah, everybody's going to get, because it's very minimalist drums now. It's sort of snare, kick, and hat, and
which I love. Do you know what I mean? It's with the mix sound techniques of now, there's so much space in the mix that you can really get these things poking through. But
so from 2009, you've been collecting since. Has that changed the way you've worked?
Yeah, I think we're just sampling less, basically.
Yeah.
We used to, that's another thing, the whole Way Out West sound was pretty much sample-tastic. Nick's fantastic at kind of crate digging and, just unearthing these incredible sounds from, we spent a lot of money on records, basically.
Yeah.
Just visiting record shops and just, hip-hop style crate digging.
Yeah.
So, but you could do that on YouTube now, can't you, really? Just sort of filter off the tops and the bottoms and it kind of sounds all right.
Yeah.
It's still very usable.
It's got that sort of gritty quality to it,
Exactly.
So how did the studio partnership work? Was it very much Nick coming in with a bunch of records, going, check this out? You were the technician, but you were also a DJ as well. You know,
Yeah,
why?
completely. Yeah, I mean, always been a DJ on my own right, and plus releasing records.
Yeah,
Originally with our DJ Die under the name of Sublove, and my little
Yeah.
brother making hip hop and stuff like that. So, do you know what I mean? I've always been able to do it by myself, but the Way Out West thing was just kind of me and Nick, and still is, because we're working on the 5th album at the moment, and it's
Right.
almost finished as well. So, I went on that. But yeah, we just kind of, there's something that happens between the two of us, and it doesn't even have to be, you know, Nick can just be sat in the room hanging out, and not that he does all the time. He's very proactive, but days when he just comes over and chills, it just kind of adds some kind of interesting element.
Does it instantly become a Way Out West type of day then, just with having his presence there?
Yeah, just as, you know, him snoring in the background. But no, it's very nice to work with someone again after sort of almost becoming like a solo act in 2010 and just sort of knocking the Way Out West thing on the head. It's like we didn't really, but we weren't working together, so it was. Do you know what I mean? We were both doing our own thing, but it's really I'm enjoying having someone to bounce ideas around and just
And does Way Out West sort of you're able to walk away from it for a few months, do your own projects, and Nick go off touring, and then come back, and you know, it's very loose and but it's always there. Is that
absolutely? Yeah, I mean, I'm working on loads of solo stuff at the moment as well, plus doing like the Anjunadeep 6 mix. So it's so much to do. Do you know what I mean? It's full on, but you know, we find time between our touring schedules and whatever. Do you know what I mean? We can make it happen.
What about? Let's get down to sort of making like the technology. What software do you use first of all, I suppose?
So basically writing in Ableton and then mixing in Pro Tools 9.
Right. And do you kind of lay everything off to tape, so to speak, or WAV files, and then bring those into Pro Tools and mix?
Yeah, we'll basically just bounce every track. So basically what we'll do, the track will be, I'd say, pretty much finished in Ableton. Like it'll sound good enough to test in a club. You know what I mean? And then bounce it all down, take off pretty much most of the plugins, not the sort of crucial artistic things, but all the EQ and stuff like that. Just export all files, bring it all into Tools, and then start on the mix. And it usually sounds quite a lot better.
And that gives you that sort of old discipline of doing a mix. Most dance producers build the mix as they go. This would be completely resetting everything and
it's a whole different side of the brain. Do you know what I mean? Because you're kind of like, you're actually, you know, exactly what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? You're doing a mix.
Yeah.
As opposed to writing. But you do end up adding little bits here and there and whatever. Sure. But you are still focusing more on the actual. And then you realize what you don't actually need in the track, which you don't. When you're writing and accumulating stuff, do you know what I mean? You're just chucking everything in. You know, put it into Tools, and you can actually think, actually, that sound is clapping with this.
So doing it that way, do you feel free to just throw kitchen sink things and I will throw this in and we'll sort it out. You know, when we come to the mix, we can remove stuff. Is that okay? That's kind of interesting way of working. Yeah. Are you an in the box type of guy? You've got all this, you know, probably vintage amazing gear around you. Do you ever go for a Prophet 5 emulation when you've got the real thing there, or always?
Totally. I'm loving the Lush D16.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Is that the 101?
The 101, yeah.
Amazing.
Right. Yeah. So what's the go-to synth? Soft synth? What? What's the go-to soft synth?
At the moment, that one.
That one?
Yeah, really nice.
Checking,
I mean, there's a new thing. Checking Gladiator recently. That's quite interesting.
Right.
You know, there's just tons of stuff. But when it comes to like processing, it's all software. Yeah, we don't have any tasty like compressors or EQs or anything like that, unfortunately. But I find Pro Tools HD sounds good enough, and I'm used to working with it. So.
And are you a Waves UAD type guy, or just whatever you have?
Well, so it's HD, so we don't need to use UAD because the
native stuff. So you're using Wave stuff, and
Wave's really good. Yeah, a lot of Wave stuff's good. What else? Some really like tone boosters stuff for that. Audio unit stuff is really quite interesting. Very cheap as well, but the Barracuda limiter.
Right. Okay.
Amazing.
Right. I haven't. Yeah, we've been. I love doing these interviews because you just always pick up little tips and go, right, I'm going to check it. I don't know this Barracuda. I'm going to check it out as soon as I come off. So, a typical day in your studio, you sit down to an empty Ableton session. Where do you start?
Yeah, I mean that's the tricky bit, really.
Yeah.
I mean it's just like an idea can come from anywhere. Do you know what I mean? It can be a sample, it can be just a fluky little kind of riff that comes out of nowhere. It can be just jamming on all the synths. You know, one thing that's quite nice is to get everything kind of rocking on the desk.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've got like separate MIDI channels for all the analogs and stuff like that, and just jam it out. You know, just hit play. The 808 and 909 can be synced, so you can sort of program beats on them. If you know, just sort of just keep it rolling like that, and you know, it's almost like pretend you're Orbital, basically.
Yeah. So you put everything through the Soundcraft Ghost, is that correct? Yeah, that's
right, that's just, yeah. So it acts more like a kind of.
I mean, I know Phil had a Ghost here, and he loved it as well, and he was very sorry to see it go. Listening to the productions, your drum sounds seem very authentic. It's not.
Thank you.
And I don't mean this. You're not going cliched. Is kind of what I'm saying. You don't follow the EDM style. Right, let's have a riser here now and stuff. You're kind of very anti that. Is that correct?
Yeah, massively. I mean, I think the most boring thing you can do is just chuck in a bit of white noise. Do you know what I mean? It's like so many things you can do with white noise to make it sound more interesting. You know, like maybe put it through like a lo-fi, change the pitch of it. Do you know what I mean? It's like just give things time and just spend weeks on a track. Don't spend days on a track. You know, maybe spend a couple of months on one tune. You know, not constantly, but you know, on and off.
I mean, you've done 4 albums for Way Out West. You have done your own artist album. You're going on to the 5th album for Way Out. How do you keep going? How do you do? What is the thing that gets you up in the morning and gets you into that studio?
Yeah, I mean, it's just very God. I mean, what else is there to do in life?
Exactly, it's the alternative going to work in Tesco's, I suppose, isn't it?
Incredibly fortunate to not have a day job. Do you know what I mean? This is what I do. So I count my blessings, and as time goes on, and I realise how many people do actually have jobs as well. It's like wow. So do you know what I mean? Count my blessings even more. But you know what I mean? There's never enough time in the day anyway. Plus having a couple of kids and a family, touring most weekends. It's like you know what I mean? Time's precious. So just need to crack on with it, really.
So you sort of when you get into the studio, are you quite disciplined when you get in there to work?
Try to be, yeah. There's always like in the morning I wake up and I know kind of what has to be done. Okay. Any given day.
Right. So. And how do you approach? Like I was listening to some of the songs, you've done with what do you call the guy, Pete Joseph, and how do you approach the songwriting process? Do you write songs, or do you rely on these guys coming in and writing songs? Yeah, lately that's been the vibes really. It hasn't even been coming in. It's like sending backing tracks to the vocalists. And, you know, that's how it's done these days, really. I mean, years ago, before the internet existed, it's like singers would come to the studio and we'd work together, which in a way was better because it created some kind of synergy between us, between you know me and the singers, whatever. But this way is more time efficient. You know, and you can send it out to, you know, people and just they send it back to you and blah, blah, blah. Then you can get on Skype and talk about it. And so what are you saying? Just a backing track? Do you give any direction when you send the backing track out, or do you just... Sometimes. It depends if I've got like a definite vibe on how I want the vocals to be or not. But usually I let the singer just kind of do their thing. Yeah. And then as soon as they send me their first, you know, sketch, that's when I can give them more feedback. But it's very, you know, I'm not a songwriter as such. I don't really think about lyrics. Don't even think about track titles until the very end. You know, it's more, you know, just about the sound for me, you know, the concept. You've been through probably the 3 sort of phases of dance music, I think, from the beginnings in the early 90s, where it was this, you know, people traveling in convoy up motorways up and down England, this sort of the excitement of that. You were DJing and you were at the forefront of, you know, producing big tracks. Then you've been through the massive saturation in the UK of you know, being across, and then the kind of downfall. Yeah, completely. That was like 2005. Wasn't it? How did you know? Dead. So. How did you survive the downfall and keep going? I mean, the downfall was actually quite a lucrative time, I seem to compared to now. Right. Okay. Yeah. You're having the downfall now. Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, it's just it's just a fight. You know. Yeah. But, how have you sort of adapted and found that you know, because I know really the gift would have sold, you know, 40, 50,000, maybe even more records. Your albums would have done 40, 50,000 copies, and now, you know, Beatport, you're selling a fraction of that. It means nothing. Yeah, the money you get then means nothing. I think one of the key things is having quite a large back catalogue. Yeah. You know, so you do see royalties trickling in, and you know, you kind of look at it like tips, really. I mean, you don't count on this money to survive, but it does happen, like PRS, MCPS. Yeah. It just kind of rolls on, you know. So it's this DJ income, which is crucial. It's other little things here and there, you know, the occasional remix, whatever. And do you do any sort of ad work, TV work, anything like that, or is it just pure?
That's for the future. That's when I'm too old to DJ.
You're going to move into the DJing? Oh, sorry, the ad work. And
Yeah. I mean, all that stuff. I don't fancy being in a club, and the average club are less than half my age. Not the move. So I think got another 10 years maybe, cool. But I don't really want to be DJing at the age of 50.
What do you think about you say you're going to do another West album? What do you think about the album as a concept nowadays? Do you think it's still relevant, or is it just a conveyor belt of singles? It's
a tricky one, isn't it? Because now you can go onto iTunes and pick and choose the tracks that you like and Beatport and whatever. So it's not the concept that it was. But saying that, I think you do have more of a product, or I hate that word when it comes to music, but there's something more substantial when you've got like an album, because you can put more of a campaign behind it. I'd like to think so anyway. It
feels like a body of work that's sort of a bit of a stamp on a moment of time, and
as opposed to just an EP, which could be 4 tracks, which could be a third of an album, but usually isn't. It's usually like 1 single and 3 kind of tracks to go with it. Do you know what I mean? So
let's talk a bit about where you live, because there's definitely a special vibe about Bristol, and you can definitely hear Bristol in your tracks. It's Massive Attack, it's Portishead, it's it's all those guys. What is it about that city?
I mean, I'm not sure really, because we don't live in that kind of area. Like a lot of that kind of vibe is a little bit, the rougher kind of edge, and we live up in Clifton Village.
Okay, hello.
So I'm not sure. I mean,
I'm pretty sure you've just dissed half of your city there.
Yeah, exactly. Dirty crofters. You know what I mean? But when I was a kid, my dad was really on that scene, so he used to drag me out to hip hop parties all the time. So
okay.
You know what I mean? I was exposed to it at a very impressionable age, so maybe that's where it all came in. But as far as vibes goes, I think Bristol's always had a multicultural thing going on, from the slave trade. It's just the whole reggae thing, really, sound system thing. It's been.
Anytime I visited the place or played in it, it's you definitely felt that sort of port city. You could feel that the traders came in and brought reggae with them, and it was a slow, chilled out vibe. And there's a city in Ireland here called Cork, and it's the same. It's a big reggae city and slow, and deep house just went through the city.
I used to live in Cork actually when I was a kid. My parents moved there when I was about 2. For about half a year.
It is the Bristol of Ireland, I think.
I'm saying. Good times.
So tell me, how's technology changed for you? How is how have you changed from sort of, you've kind of went the reverse. You've probably
I know.
Went, in the box, and then went and bought all these synths. How is it? Did you get bored sort of with Ableton and soft synths, or frustrated, or why did you start collecting the big synths?
I think I just started going on Gear Sluts and reading about how kind of desirable these sounds were, and wanting it, because it's like, right, this is something that is give it to me. So it's just kind of slightly childish in a way, because you don't need this stuff. It's just a luxury to have. If you look in old music magazines from we've got old copies of Music Technology from the early 90s. The readers ads at the back, there'll be a Jupiter 8 for £250. There'll be a CS80 for £300.
Yeah. And
there'll be the Akai S1000 for £3,000. So it's as you said. Do you know what I mean? It's completely flipped around.
Yeah. And do you walk in does it inspire you when you sort of go down in the studio in the morning and you open the door and there's just that smell of vintage and the look, and you go, yeah, let's just make something proper here? Is that
it? Can, but it can also do the complete opposite, and you can just think, oh, where do I start? And you can drown in possibilities. Then you think, why don't I just focus on the computer and just use some of this new software that's being designed and try to do something current. You know what I mean? So it's a bit of both, really.
Do you get bogged down in sort of trying to patch things up and getting things tuned, and this isn't working? And
completely, man. Yeah, I can so tell you've done all this stuff.
yeah. No, I mean, the greatest day of my life was when I sold the studio and got a G5, and it was just everything in the box. I was like,
in tune, bam.
Absolutely. There was no earth loops, there was no hums. So.
But saying that, everyone at the moment, they're just whacking, vinyl noise and all sorts of dirty sounds into tracks, just to kind of bring back some of that filth.
And I've said it many times before, the one thing I do miss is going and standing at an A rack and just twiddling knobs and playing one keyboard below, and as you say, vibing up and having it through the desk. And I miss I still to this day miss a parametric EQ in a straight line that you can sweep through the frequencies.
That whole hands-on thing, personally, it's like it's almost something that you do when you start a track, you're writing it, and then when you want to add all these interesting things, that's when I get hands-on. Like I've got a little chain at the moment, I've got a little filter factory, and then a few little delays going into it, and I've just been like bouncing all over the desk, and you just record it all live into Ableton as you're running and chop it all up, and but that's when the magic happens, really, when you're hands-on and you're just dubbing out the echoes and getting all kind of jazz shaka. Do you know what I mean?
That's important to you. Is it that sort of feeling the vibe? That's a real crux of. You're not a very clinical sort of type producer, are you?
Possibly to an extent, yeah. But I think a lot of these happy accidents is where the magic can shine through, really.
Cool. And let's talk a little bit about your relationship with Anjunadeep. That has sort of flourished over the last few years. How did it start, and is it a fruitful relationship for you?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I think the first thing was they signed Lasso, maybe 2010 or something. I'm not quite sure when it was, or even 11. But yeah, it's been going really well, actually. So we're just working on Depot 6 at the moment, and it's they've really changed direction over the last year and a half, and it's great to see, because Deep and Beats were sounding like almost one label. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's all very progressive house, and the whole they're just they're on the case now properly, and it's great. So yeah.
And are you sort of happy to have this real nice home that you can feed a lot of stuff through, and sort of know that I have a creative outlet and supportive? Yeah,
definitely, man. I mean, there's quite a few. Basically, if a track gets through Anjunadeep's A&R, it's good.
I've tried a few tracks there recently, and they've said no. So I might send them via you and just put your name on them, maybe.
That's nice. I mean, we get submissions every day, so there's so much music to listen to, and I am part of the A&R team, so
okay.
Yeah, so it's nice to.
Okay, cool. Yeah. You're quite a prolific remixer as well. Is that something?
Reasonably.
Yeah. Well, you definitely have quite a few remixes. Is that something you enjoy doing, or is it something you do when you need to escape from your own productions?
No, it's nice to be doing remixes whilst you're doing your own productions, really. Just, the more projects you have on the go at one time, I find the more productive you are with those projects.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? You just dip in and out and do a little bit of this and that, and then you get really into one of them, sort of focus on it for a few days. But yeah, remixing is kind of, the hook's already there, so you're just kind of writing around, and the hook's the hardest bit to come up with anyway. So yeah, they're just kind of a laugh, aren't they, really?
Laugh. Let's talk about some plugin chains. Cool. Do you have certain chains that you use? Say drum bus. Do you have a drum bus that you like to use?
Yeah, I do. In Ableton, when I'm writing, I always put what's the compressor? The glue compressor. Put the drum bus. I mean, I usually have like sort of a drum bus, a bass bus, music 1 and music 2. Just sort of generally, and then I can get sort of a lot more interesting with it, but that's
your starting point.
Get a template.
Yeah.
In Pro Tools, I put the SSL compressor for the drum bus.
Yeah.
I'm really into the Renaissance, the Waves R compressor at the moment, because it's quite whip snappy for side chaining.
Okay.
God, what else am I feeling? One of the really old delays I really like in Pro Tools, the Echo Farm.
Yes. Yeah.
So. That hasn't really been outdone, I don't think.
And Jody, does every track go to Pro Tools, or is there sometimes you every single time it's without fail it has to go in? Yeah. And is that because you always feel it's better?
It can slightly improve. I mean, sometimes it might lose a little bit of the rough edge, but I think it's quite important for me to at least go through this process. And I might even just bounce all the stems and pretty much leave it at unity, and it'll be it might be done just like that, but. But generally, I do like to kind of take it a little bit further with tools.
I take it you're a player. You've been at it so long. I take it you go over to the keys and you start jamming out stuff.
I had piano lessons when I was a kid, from like the age of 6 almost.
And can you program via the mouse, or do you get frustrated like myself?
And as in like
draw? Yeah, no,
I like playing same as you do, really. Do you know what I mean? So I've got a little keyboard that I take with me, one of the little Akai ones that travels.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can sort of play with the QWERTY keyboard, can't you?
yeah, badly. I mean, probably play
A, E, and G.
And what about then your master bus then on your? I take it you obviously don't put something on the Ableton, but if you go into Pro Tools, what would you put over your master bus?
Well, actually, I'm using the Audience Sumo, so I'm actually going out, a summing amp.
Okay, yep, right.
So I'm going out 4 stereos into that, and then back in. But for the master bus, basically, I leave it open for the mastering engineer to do their job. But for like a quick test, just to play in clubs, just a limiter. That's it.
Just a limiter, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously L2 is an absolute classic, and I've been using that for a long time. And then the Barracuda, when I was talking about the tone boosters Barracuda, that's my favorite at the moment. But it's not Artaz or TDM, so go back into Ableton for that.
Right. Do you try and leave things, you're not one of these people that compresses every single channel, or do you heavily process stuff? I mean, it doesn't sound like you heavily...
I do sometimes, but usually for an effect, to be honest. I mean, but I'm definitely learning more about how to do a mix down by the day. Do you know what I mean? I'd like to think the mixes I'm doing now are a lot better than they were 2 years ago. In fact, I think my mix downs used to be rubbish.
Right.
Listening to a lot of the old Way Out West stuff as well. When we switched over from when we started to first do stuff in audio as opposed to everything MIDI.
Yeah.
It's a terrible time for mix down. I think everyone was just kind of learning how to mix again, and suddenly the Germans had it right. I think they were using mixing desks and stuff, but you could really hear the dip in quality.
But I mean, like, domination for a track, what's that, 94? Is it maybe even earlier?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, that's still to this day sounds incredible,
That's cool. But listen to it next to a mix down of now, and it'll sound shit.
But I mean, listen to most records from '92 and listen now. I mean, it sounds great. I think it's just at the time it blew Domination especially blew my head off just because of the solid, the energy in it. I remember when I was in early studios trying to copy that sort of, is it like the Simmons drum sort of, fill, and I was just going, and it just kept lifting.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah, that was the Studio Master desk, actually. That was before the Ghost, so quite a kind of budget desk, man, but it distorted really nicely. I do miss it a little bit, but it used to distort kick drums amazingly well.
It just still sounds great. And how do you go from kind of a breaks producer to, would you describe your sound as chilled house now, or how would you describe your sound?
I mean, some would say it's electronica, some would say it's deep house, some would say it's indie dance, some would say it's progressive house, some would say it's house.
But genuinely, when you go through your albums, it is all of those things, because there's a down tempo track, and then there's a breaks track, then there's the sort of housey vibe, and is that how you keep things fresh?
Yeah, I think it's all just kind of, it's all house music, it's all acid house, isn't it? Really. Yeah. But just as a DJ, you just kind of get used to programming a set with different moods. You know what I mean? It depends what time of the night you play, blah blah blah. So plus doing the radio mixes sort of every other week just keeps this kind of feeling for being slightly eclectic.
Well, let's briefly touch on DJing then. It's why did you and Nick never sort of DJ out as a duo? Why did that never happen?
I don't know, really. I mean, we are doing it a little bit at the moment. We did a show in Sydney a few weeks ago. We're doing something in New York quite soon. So we kind of do sometimes, but it's never really been something because when we get together, we're Way Out West, and we like to do like a live show kind of thing. Yeah. So I think that's the reason, really. We're never like a DJ duo together. So
do you have a live show format? Do you bring a couple of keyboards and spectacles with lights on them? Is that a thing you enjoy doing?
I mean, we've done it in many different ways over the years, and we're trying to figure out the best way to do it for the next album. And I think production's one of the most important things. How it looks.
But also, I mean, it's one of the most expensive things to do in music business these days.
Yeah, we've lost a lot of money playing as a band in 2005. It's like, let's get a bass player, let's get a drummer, let's have a singer, let's tour America in a tour bus. It's thousands of pounds.
Yeah. No, like we did one gig in Glasgow for MTV, and it was this full bongo players and drummers, and I adored doing it. But when I got the bill, I just went, I saw this. I know I could have brought records and headphones.
You know what I mean?
So what is your DJ setup? Is it Tractor or is it Nexus or
just CDJ 2000s
USB and
hopefully the Nexus if they've got it. I mean, I'm not going to touch the sync button, but the Nexus mixer is wicked. Like the feedback delays get really quite dubby. So. Just good old CDJs. I was like DJing with Ableton when it sort of first started to properly work. Tried it for like 6 months. Just found I had too much power at my fingertips. So I was just adding layers of bongos and crash cymbals and rides and all sorts of stuff. You know what I mean? So I had 12 channels basically. So I couldn't leave it alone. An audio catastrophe.
No, I'd be genuinely deadly seeing going, oh, I could do this, I could do that, and
Yeah,
you're almost entertaining yourself rather than the crowd.
Yeah, massively. I was just getting the whole mindset of production and DJing completely
Mixed up
in my head, and it was just yeah.
And you find going out DJing, that definitely feeds back into the productions and helps sort of.
The most important thing is the only way to be relevant in dance as a producer, you have to be DJing or clubbing. Very, very regularly. I mean, if I don't play for 2 weeks, I start to lose the focus of what works.
Okay.
Yeah, massively. You have to feel it, I think.
Right. Okay. So I mean, so playing out it's a really important thing for you then. Yeah.
Crucial.
And how do you?
So a good gig on a Friday, Saturday. I mean, in the studio Monday, you know what to do.
Right.
Plus, you've tested all the tracks you're working on as well, so you know what needs to change.
You need okay. No, that I mean, I DJ rarely these days, and sort of, but still, fine listening and stuff just gets me buzzed up and stuff.
Cool,
but yeah, no. Jody, thank you very, very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for giving us insight into your sort of your massive world where there's as many. I admire your work rate. I just the amount of albums that come out and tracks. I was going through Spotify playlists and stuff today and just went, wow, you don't stop, and I think that's probably key.
That's nice. I really appreciate that, buddy. And I actually think I'm quite unprolific because some people put out 4 records a year. So and. I'm lucky if I do one.
No, we completely understand. We would do one every 2 years. But thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all very, very soon. Thank you, Jody. Cheers.
See you later, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.